All right, thanks for joining us here at Cleveland Community Chapel for our Old Testament studies. Comes out every Sunday evening. We're in chapter 26 of Exodus. It's one of those chapters that kind of gets tedious because it's the pattern that God gave Moses to build the tabernacle and all the things pertaining to the tabernacle. And I'm going to read about the first 6 verses, and then we're going to skip over to about verse 30 or so over here. And if you'd like to, your homework, you can read the in-between verses. But it's just a very intricately detailed chapter about if you were going to start with scratch and build this, here's what you need. In fact, I've done that before. I think I mentioned to you. I was looking for the pictures. Maybe I can find them for you next week and show you the scale model that we have built on the lawn before years ago with a youth group. I think we used 1 inch for 12, and it would have been really huge, but we were able to make it 12th size and build it just using the Bible for the details here. And they had to set this thing up everywhere they went for the next 40 years through the wilderness journey. And every time God told them to move, they had to take it down and move it the way God did, carrying it on the sticks, the holy objects on the sticks and not touching anything, and putting it back up and putting all the ram skins and badger skins and all the utensils and all that stuff they'd been carrying for no telling how many miles each time they moved. And it was the way that God was teaching them and us through reading it in the Word today, that how a holy God could dwell in the midst of sinful people. He was in the middle of the camp and everybody was organized around him, and you had to approach God through the sacrifices. For us Christians, we know that's all pointing toward Jesus. You can only approach God through the sacrifice of Jesus. Chapter 26. We'll read about the first 6 here because I want to just point out some things to you. Last week's chapter was about erecting the building part of it and all, and now it's going to be about building some of the other details. Remember we read last week about the building and the candelabra, the menorah, if you would, the candlestick, King James calls it, and the table of showbread with the 12 loaves that you change out every so often, and the Ark of the Covenant in the most holy place in there. Some of that's mentioned again tonight, but this is more about building the coverings for all of it now, out of the skins and all. So chapter 26, verse 1, moreover, thou shalt make the tabernacle with 10 curtains of fine twined linen. And the color of these fine twined linens are going to be 3. There's blue, there's purple, and there's scarlet, in this particular order, with cherubims of cunning work that shall you make them. Or they have pictures of the cherubims on them, I guess. Now, here's an interesting thing that occurred to me one time, and I don't know this for a fact, but this is my thought. If you read about Jesus in the Gospels and how they put the robe upon him, I think one gospel says that it was a purple robe. And another gospel said the soldiers placed upon him a scarlet robe. So you say, well, was it scarlet or was it purple? And I'm just one of them people that believe that the Bible don't have any mistakes in it, so I think it must have been a little bit of both. And as I read about the tabernacle covering, which Jesus was the tabernacle of God. Remember, God became flesh and tabernacled or dwelt among us in the person of Jesus Christ. I could see it having a scarlet and purple and even a little bit of blue on it, because those were the colors of the covering on the tabernacle, blue, purple, and scarlet. Now, the ones that would have placed that on him didn't know that, but in the providence of God, he could have been showing us something here, just a God wink, if you would. That's my thinking on that. Verse 2, the length of one curtain be 8 and 20 cubits, breadth in one curtain 4 cubits. Here's all the measurements. You're getting the pattern to cut them out and make them the right size. Every one of the curtains shall have one measure or be the same measurement. 5 curtains will be coupled together. They'll not be loose. You're going to sew them all together eventually. And the other 5 curtains will be coupled one to another. Make loops of blue upon the edge of one curtain from the selvage to the coupling. Likewise, you'll make the uttermost edge of another curtain in the coupling of the second. 50 loops. Got 10 curtains. Eventually, it'll be 50 loops on all of them to hang them on a pole and put them right. In the one curtain, 50 loops you'll make in the edge of the curtain that's in the coupling of the second, that the loops may take hold of one another. Just how to attach all this stuff. Verse 6 now. And you shall make 50 taches of gold, and couple the curtains together with the taches, and it shall be one tabernacle. I wanted to read through 6 because all these little pieces are coming together. You got somebody over here cutting out this piece and cutting out this piece, and it's all going to be put together, and the loops that are going to put it all together as you go around. But all these little individual pieces are going to come up, and it says it'll be make one tabernacle. And sometimes people say, well, how come there's so many different churches today, preacher? How come there shouldn't just be one church? There's all kinds of different. How do you know which one's right? Well, probably there's not one that is all right and the other ones that are all wrong. It's like all of us are a little bit different, and we're all human beings. We're all trying to interpret the Bible the best that we can. And we've ended up here 2,000-something years after the crucifixion, and we've got different organizations. You've got Baptists, you've got Methodists, you've got Church of God, you've got Pentecostal, different people, different styles of worship for different people, for one thing. But then you've got different bureaucracies in many of all the denominations, and different organizations. And even the New Testament addresses that. It says, I believe it's in Corinthians, says there are different organizations, but one Lord. Or as Jesus put it, there's just one shepherd and one fold. And one of these days is going to come to the consummation of the age, and the Baptists and the Methodists and the Church of Christ and the Church of God and everybody else are going to come together, and there's not going to be denominations anymore. We're going to just see that we're all along, we're really just God's people, Christians, with our various ideas and different things. But if we were all coming to God through Jesus Christ, we might have different ideas and different organizations, but we're all part of the one church of Jesus Christ. There's not different churches really. There's different local churches making up the one universal church that belongs to the Lord Jesus Christ. And if you're part of that church, we all got there the same way. We all trusted in the sacrifice of Jesus Christ and his imputed righteousness, which made us children of God. Now, it took us through verse 6. Your homework's to read verse 7 through 29. You just study it for yourself and read through it here, but it's the pattern still that God gave Moses when he's on the mountain, and Moses came down and wrote it down. We've got it today, and people used it back in Moses' day, written down, so they'd know how to make everything the right size. Verse 30, that's where we're going to finish up. We're going to go to 30 through the end of the chapter now. Finally, you get to the point where thou shalt rear up the tabernacle. We're going to set it up finally. And God says, according to the fashion thereof, which was showed thee in the mount. Just like I showed you, Moses. I don't know how God showed him. Maybe in his mind, or maybe it played out before him when Moses was alone with God on the mountain. We don't know that. But we do know that God showed Moses how to do it somehow. 31, and you'll make a veil or a curtain of blue, purple, and scarlet, and fine twined lining and cunning work with cherubims that'll be made. And you'll hang it upon the 4 pillars of shittim wood overlaid with gold. Their hooks will be of gold upon the 4 sockets of silver. Now, we've read a little bit already, and we found out there was tremendous wealth goes into this tabernacle. And in this tabernacle, a place where people came to meet with God, was all this gold, and all this, the objects were overlaid with gold and silver, and if you went inside, it was really beautiful. Nothing like that on earth. But now from the outside, if you just looked at it, it was just ram skins and badger skins and different colors of dye on them. And maybe there's something in that for us too. It's like, first of all, we could go with Jesus. Jesus just looked like a human being to the rest of the world. But on the inside is where God was dwelling in the Holy of Holies of Jesus' soul. And it's the same thing really for every Christian today. Christians are just human beings that look like the rest of the general public, generally speaking. But what makes them different is what's on the inside. God's dwelling there. And Christians are beautiful on the inside to God. But from the people out in the world that's just looking at, we just look like other people do. 33. Hang up the veil under the taches, and you'll bring it thither with a veil, and you bring inside the ark of the testimony, or the ark of the covenant. And the veil shall divide unto you between 2 places. Now, this is kind of confusing, but you got to listen close. there's going to be two sections inside there. Once you go inside, there's going to be, the first place you come to is called the holy place. And it's twice as long as the cube that's behind the curtain on the other side, which is called, guess what? The most holy place. You got the holy place, and then when you get to the second curtain, beyond that, where the high priest only went once a year and sprinkled the blood upon the Ark of the Covenant that was sitting in there in that cube in the most holy place, that's where the Shekinah glory, the presence of God, came down and dwelt between the cherubims on top of that box, to make it understandable, which we call the Ark of the Covenant. Inside of it was placed the law of God. Above it was the lid that was called the mercy seat, and above that was God. We get on over in the Bible in Samuel, and some people steal the Ark of the Covenant from God's people in a war one time, and they raised the lid up, and I think the King James says there's like 70,000 of them died in one day. It's because they exposed themselves to the law of God without the mercy of God. And they said, who can stand before this holy Lord God? None of us can. Thank God the mercy of God is between us and his law, or we'd be the same way. That story in the Bible in Samuel, by the way, always conjures up images in my mind, like the last scene from Indiana Jones. Remember when they opened up the Ark of the Covenant and their eyes were all melting out and everything? They all died. That's what happened in Samuel. People exposed themselves to the law of God without going through the mercy of God. Nobody can stand. We could not stand the judgment of God except through the place where the blood was sprinkled. The sacrifice of Christ gives us the mercy of God between us and his holy law that we fail to keep. So, the most holy place and the holy places, the two places in there. 34. Now, in the holy place, by the way, the priest went in there all the time. Remember, they changed the bread out once a week, and they kept the menorah, the candle stick burning, and all this thing. And they did. You even had to do sacrifices to get there, but it's only into that other place, the most holy place, that they only went on the Day of Atonement, once a year. Now, when Jesus died on the cross, what happened at the temple, which was what the tabernacle became, it was a permanent place eventually, is the veil of the temple. That's what ripped from top to bottom, exposing the most holy place to everything else, because through the sacrifice of Christ, now we have a direct access to God through the death of Christ. 33, the Ark of the Covenant will be there. There's two places, holy and most holy. 34, and you shall put the mercy seat upon the Ark of the Testimony in the most holy place. Don't forget to put the lid, to make it understandable, the mercy seat upon the box, the Ark of the Covenant, or there'll be trouble. And it goes into the most holy place. As I pointed out before, you can build everything in here except for the mercy seat. We don't know exactly the dimension. That's the only thing that was left out, was the depth of the lid called the mercy seat. And I said, I believe God did that on purpose, not that he forgot. It was a way of saying there's no depth to the mercy of God. It's unlimited, and that's good news for you and me. And 35, you'll set the table, that table of showbread, outside the veil. It's back into the holy place instead of the most holy place. And then in the holy place also, beside the table, you put the candlestick over against the table on the side of the tabernacle toward the south, and you'll put the table on the north side, because it's always going to face the same direction. And you'll make a hanging for the door of the tent, blue, purple, and scarlet, and fine twined linen, wrought with needlework. Last verse. And thou shalt make for the hanging 5 pillars, poles, of shittim wood, and overlay them with gold, and their hooks be of gold, and you'll cast 5 sockets of brass for them, or that's where they're going to set up against the ground. They're going to stand in these sockets of brass there. All right, we'll pick back up here next week. It's a lot of integral details, but God's got something in them for us. See you next time.